Parasyte the Maxim, episode 22, Quiescence and Awakening. I definitely had to look up that first word because I was like, I have never seen that before in my life. But the definition of that word is tranquilly at rest, and I think that definitely applies to Migi in this episode, which was a huge shock to me. I was very surprised that they did things that way, where Migi, at least temporarily, was killed off, and Migi at this point we get like our little hint that Migi is alive, and Shinichi has another dream where Miki's like really, really tiny. It's not like the big, weird skeletal thing that we saw before. It's this really, really tiny version of Migi, and in the dream, Migi mentions like, "Oh, that person is still alive," and I really like that. I was like, okay, that really surprised me. I was curious how things are gonna play out with him really having no defense. I'm like, they clearly didn't defeat Gotou in this episode, which great attempt, and I was like, holy crap, they got him. And then sadly it failed. I was like, oh, that's crazy. And then they actually had Migi die, and I was like, that is nuts. So what I thought initially when they did that was that Migi was actually going to be taken in by Goto, and it's like, this is the only way to survive is to work for me. And Migi would accept that because Migi wouldn't want to die. And then they would do it where Migi somehow reattached to Shinichi or something, despite having maybe being forced to be a weapon or something like that, if there was some way to do that. But with the little hint that they gave us, I'm assuming that won't be happening, and the version of Migi that we had will no longer exist, which is really sad. It's still Migi that died, and even though there's still a part of Migi that's left, it won't be the same. It'll be, a part that's able to develop over time. And I'm curious, of course, to see if Migi returns in that way, will that mean that Shinichi will kind of revert back to the way that he was? Because of course that's why he changed, was because of everything that Migi did with his heart and healing him, and how all those cells were in his brain and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. Like, I wonder if that's how that's going to happen, where if these cells from Migi kind of expand again and stretch out to be, his full right arm again, will that mean that all the cells that helped heal him will kind of drain out of him, and so he'll revert back to who he was, in those first couple, like basically the first half of the series. And I think that'll be very cool. I think that'll be interesting to see him realize, like, I'm mentally becoming different. And that was the case quite for the past couple of episodes, especially after, what happened with Reiko and stuff. So that it was clear that he has kind of come back as, a human being. But it would be interesting if that did happen, where he kind of reverted back, especially to like kind of the more cowering version of himself, which is normal for that crazy situation. I think it's normal to be super scared and freaked out. But I like what they did. It was sad to see Migi go, of course. It was very sad and very surprising. In general, it was very surprising. I didn't think that would happen, but very cool moment. Shinichi did get a scar from this episode. He has a scar just like the army dude, which I thought was really interesting, like almost exactly the same. And I was like, I wonder if that's supposed to be like significant or something, because it was just interesting. Like, that looks, of course the way they drew it, of course it's a scar, so it looks the same. But I was like, I wonder if that's supposed to be significant or something like that. But Migi spends, or not Migi, but Shinichi spends this episode kind of just with this random woman, and she helps him out, and he helps her out. They go shopping and stuff like that, and they kind of just do kind of a normal, everyday sort of thing, and he's just dealing with the loss of someone that was really important to him. He's wondering, what is he going to do? He has to, he's like, I got to explain what happened with my arm and everything to my dad and tell him, what's going on. He can't defend himself anymore because Migi is, of course, gone. And there's a lot of things going through his head, and I thought that was really cool, and he's just trying to understand where he goes from this point without any sort of defense. He can't be found, which is sort of interesting. It's kind of a half and half situation, because he couldn't be found, and that's why their plan was going to work initially, because he's not the one that can be sensed. It was always Migi, which I'm assuming will return because of this new version. Once it kind of develops, it'll be powerful enough to be sensed by Gotou, who at this point, when they have that little ending scene and he's like crouched down, I'm like, he just looks like a spiked turtle or something crazy, which I just thought was interesting. But he's got like the spikes, and he's just in bushes, just hiding, and then just spikes kind of coming off of him, which I thought looked kind of interesting, and also a little creepy as well, the way they drew it, which I thought was cool. But I think that might happen once this version of Migi does return, Shinichi will have to kind of go on the run again, and who knows what will happen, because if this is truly, Migi kind of reforming, I would assume it's going to be the Migi that existed pre Shinichi death, or, him almost dying. It'll be that version of Migi who's still just, I want to survive, and humans are nothing, and this and that. So, I'm curious how that's going to play out. And there's only 2 episodes left, so I'm very curious if they're going to have that sort of dynamic again. And maybe they'll do both, where once, like I said, with the cells kind of reforming, it'll revert Shinichi back to who he was early on. And then we'll have early Shinichi and early Migi at the exact same time. And it's like, that would be really interesting for the last 2 episodes. That would be pretty crazy. And I don't know if that would be the best combination to go up against Gotou in order to survive. But I'm sure they'll make it, they're the heroes. But, Shinichi's obviously the main character, and we obviously got what happens if Migi dies off. There's still those cells inside of Shinichi that can reform. And so far we just have the little eye peeking out, looks around, and instantly gets tired after a couple of seconds and falls asleep. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm sure, they wouldn't have done that if Migi wasn't going to come back. It might not be the same, though. I'm curious, another thing I'm curious about is if it'll be enough to even be a full arm. Maybe it would be funny if it was like he had like a smaller arm or something weird like that. But I'm definitely excited to see how they do things. Depending on how much time they decide to skip, I would assume we aren't going to get to even see a full version of the arm, even if that is possible, because in the beginning, which is hinted at already, just a little eye pops out and then falls asleep after a couple of seconds. It would take so much more power for Migi to reform and even stretch out, period. So I would assume they'd have to skip quite a bit of time for us to see a full arm reform. And they might be different. As it gets stronger faster. So that could easily be the case if they wanted to do that. But I'm definitely looking forward to this next episode. Like I said, we only have 2 more to go. Gotou is like the only thing in the series now. It's like he is the problem. He ends up killing a guy in this episode. And the villagers who were freaked out that for whatever reason it was Shinichi, like, you're an outsider, poof, you're the problem. And I know they have issues with, trash dumping and stuff like that, but I'm like, somebody gets like ripped apart and they instantly just assume it's this random dude with one arm. Just thinking about it, like, that's a little weird to just be like, it's definitely your fault because we don't know you, so you have to be, an issue, stuff like that. And they even use the trash dumping as an excuse, and I'm like, what? That doesn't even make sense. So it was a little weird that they kind of just prosecuted him, like, this kind of has to be you and stuff. And the guy mentioned, like, it was a freaking monster and stuff like that. So I thought that was a little weird, but we'll see what happens. I mean, like I said, Gotou is the issue. So who knows? Who knows? We'll see what the heck is going to be taking place. But I'm definitely excited for the next episode. Very sad to see Migi go, but we'll get a version of Migi. I feel like it can't possibly be the same version of Migi that returns. And maybe this version will be more like Shinichi, since it was, like basically replacing his heart, pretty much. So maybe this version will be a lot more like Shinichi. And if I remember right, Migi, after they kind of did that, Migi mentioned like it may be 20 to 30% of Migi's cells were inside of Shinichi, which is a lot. And Migi even says like that's quite a bit of me. Like I'm only at about 70% now. So that's actually quite a bit, and we'll see. Like maybe we will get the full arm very quickly because 30% is quite a bit, and considering the parasite species, they're fairly advanced. They can regenerate and stuff like that. So maybe it will be, like the eye was just the first start and it got tired, but it was just like boom, got it, and then it just gets stronger and stronger really quick, and we get Migi back, although a slightly different version of Migi, kind of a bit of a reversion of the Migi character a little bit, but still wouldn't take away from what we got in this episode for sure. And the version of Migi that we saw truly developed throughout this series, which was very different by the end, and how Migi felt alone, and that realization of death and stuff like that, and the eye dilated and stuff like that. So very interesting way to end or into version, I guess, into version of a character. But definitely a good episode. Very excited for these last two. Of course, I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And with only 2 episodes left, I have to assume that they won't be defeating Gotou in the next episode. I could easily be wrong. But I want to know what you guys think will be happening in these next 2 episodes. I would assume that the next episode will really focus on Shinichi and Migi kind of reforming as a team, and this new version of Migi, coming into existence, and how that changes the dynamic that Shinichi has, and even his ideas of what Migi is, because he's changed so much. And like I said, this could be a reversion of old Migi, depending on what's happening. Because in the dream, that version of Migi does say like, "Oh, that person's still alive," meaning, I'm still gonna say herself, even though they say Migi's a god. I'm like, that's totally a woman's voice. I feel like even in the Japanese version, that's a woman's voice, and that's what I saw again. So I'm still gonna go with her, even though they classify Migi as a guy. I'm like, it just bugs me that, considering it's an alien, like, it would be different if it was a physical character, I think. But I'm like, it's an alien creature done, and it's a guy's hand done as a female voice, and maybe that's why they say he, because it's Shinichi's hand and he's a guy, so it has to be a guy. I don't know, but I'm still going with she. But the dynamic that they have, depending on how she reforms and what she's been able to gather in this weird, diluted 30% sort of state, maybe we will just see the same version of me, or like just barely any different from the version that we lost in this episode. But I think that's what the next episode is going to be. Then the finale is going to be this, kind of slightly new pairing finally taking out Gotou and just getting rid of him as a parasite. There's still, of course, other parasites in the world, so I'm curious to see what they say about that in the finale. But I think that's what the next 2 episodes are going to be. It's going to be Migi and Shinichi reforming as a team in this next one, and then, and then in the finale, it's going to be this team finally getting rid of their final obstacle, which is Gotou. But I definitely want to know your speculations for the next 2 episodes, and just what you want to see from the next 2 episodes. So please comment below, let me know, and of course, thanks for watching.